guys. Welcome to my show, My Steps to Sobriety, with your host, Stefan Neff. Today is a great day. For many of us, every new day, every new sunrise means a lot because we have been to the brink. We have been in a situation that could have very much meant for us the end. For alcoholics, well, we have been often there, down and out, but that's not the only way that your life can end. And today I've got Chris Gordon with me. Chris has a remarkable story of survival, which he will share with us. And every story of survival ends with similar ways of changing you. And that is why I'm so keen to listen to the man today, because I want to see what he went through and how that has changed him. So I'm looking so forward now to hearing from you, Chris. Chris Gordon, the survivor. Welcome to my show.
Well, thank you for having me, Stefan. I greatly appreciate it. I'm looking forward to speaking with you.
Chris, tell me a little bit about the past. Tell me about your 6 years ago, your 7 years ago. How was your life for you when life was innocent and happy for you?
All right, certainly. Well, I am the husband to a wonderful woman named Becky, and we have 3 great kids, Josh, Seth, and Anna. We live in a small town named New Ulm, Minnesota, which, as you may have guessed, sounds German because it is German. It's a very German town, and I've been living here for the last 18 years. I moved from Michigan, and if you're not familiar with Michigan, it's the state that looks like a hand. And all we Michiganders show you where we're from by pointing to our palm on our right hand. So I'm from this area, from the Flint area in Michigan, and then I moved to Minnesota in 2002. And so around that time, 6-7 years ago, my wife was, and still is, teaching social studies at the local high school. And I was and still am a special education teacher for an online middle school. And this is before everyone else was online because of the pandemic. I've been teaching online for the past 8 years.
Brilliant. Has that got to do with Minnesota, the area that you are being very rural and very, very socially isolated as such due to location?
Actually, the online teaching was because I had been teaching in a school about 50 miles away, which is about, say, I'm going to do a quick math here.
80 k's.
80 kilometers, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we at that time we had one child. Well, we discovered we were having twins, and driving 80 kilometers one way every day wasn't going to cut it. And so I found a closer job, which was about 50 steps away from, give or take, from my bedroom to the office. It's about 50 steps, depends on how tired I am. If I have more energy, it's more like 40, but if I'm shuffling, could be up to 70.
Very good. Many people, many of our viewers will have adapted a similar lifestyle. Yeah, you are.
Yes.
You were a trendsetter way before it was trendy.
Yes.
Good on you.
Not many times I can claim to be that, so I will take it.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure that you have been called many things before, not that.
Yes, yeah, that's one of the more positive things. I'll take it.
So you were quite happily living your life with a lovely wife, 3 young children, if I counted
Yes.
right. And then suddenly things did end up not so well. And when I ask many of my patients, they can nail it down to the fraction of a second in the case of an accident, or they can nail it down to a short period of time when they suddenly realized, oh shit, something is not right. What was that oh shit moment for you?
Well, I have to say that moment actually lasted. Well, there were two moments. There was the moment of when I first scratched my hand, and then 3 days later is when that second more startling moment happened. What I was doing was I was flying my younger son to the garage because I was helping my wife get our kids off to school on a Wednesday morning. And so my younger son, Seth, was being a little pokey. And so I picked him up and I was flying him back and forth, walking to the garage. And I veered too far to the right and I scratched the back of my right hand on the garage wall. And so it wasn't bleeding badly, but I can see there was a break in the skin. So I put him in the car seat. I kissed everyone goodbye. I waved them off. And then I went back to the house, cleaned the wound as well as and I thought I had done a good job, and then went on my day of teaching. Well, 3 days later, I wake up and I have this lacrosse size bump lacrosse ball size bump on my right elbow, right about here. And I go into the walk-in clinic, and this is a Saturday. The doctor says, well, it could be bursitis, it could be maybe cellulitis. Keep an eye on it, and let us know if anything else happens. Well, 10 hours later, that bump had turned into full-blown, almost elephantitis of my right arm, shoulder, and then starting to go into my chest and my back. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the character, the Incredible Hulk.
Yes.
I looked like the Hulk in mid-transformation, with puny Banner arm on this side and Hulk smash arm on this side. There's a picture that my wife took of me lying on a gurney. I have both arms like this, and you could just see the difference. It is startling. So my wife takes me to the ER. They admit me, and then immediately they find a problem. Not only because of my enlarged arm, but because they could not get a blood pressure reading on me because I had gone septic. So that's worrying them as well, because they didn't know how long if the sepsis was going to take hold, what effect that would have. And so they kept me on for observation. And then in the next morning.
No shit, Sherlock.
Yeah.
So they would have not just kept you for observation, they would have put a needle into the good side, pumped you full of fluid, would have given you immediately antibiotics. So that all occurred. Can you remember that? Can you remember that? Were you lucid then?
I was somewhat lucid then. Yes. Within this whole experience, I had so many needles in me at one point. I'm sure I had needles then, but I can't exactly remember clearly,
I hear you.
if I had
I hear you.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
so anyway, the attending doctor in the morning came up to me and said, Mr. Gordon, this is beyond us. We can do nothing more for you here. Where do you want to go? And so I immediately said the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Not only because it's the Mayo Clinic, but my father-in-law at the time was a chaplain there, and my in-laws lived in Rochester. So I thought this is the perfect place. Here I can get treated by world-class doctors, and my family can stay with my wife's parents for, I'm sure, the few days that this would take to get this all resolved. Surely a weekend. That was not the case.
I'm surprised a little bit. I have been there when patients like you came in, and we certainly would treat something like that rather more aggressively. There would certainly be the reason that I would be there, because I'm the guy who would be running the intensive care unit, and being the guy with the sharp needles, who is pretty cool in getting them in when others maybe struggle. So it is the intensive care environment would have been very rapidly been involved in a larger hospital. So do I assume that right, that this was more a clinic, a smaller place, that you went there initially?
It's a smaller hospital.
Yeah.
It serves all of what we call Brown County, and there are maybe 15 small communities within the county. New Ulm is the largest. We have about 13,000, between 13 and 14,000 people in our town, and we are the largest by at least 3 times. The next largest town is about 4,000.
Okay, I hear you.
So
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. No, brilliant. Just to set the scene that I can imagine where you were and how things worked. Because meanwhile, you're talking 3 days. That is now day 4 that they say, hey, look, we don't really know what to do with you. Day 4 off from the scratch to your current situation.
Yes.
And now how did they get you there to the Mayo Clinic? Was there an ambulance?
They were going to actually fly me in a helicopter. However, a snowstorm was impending. So yeah.
Man,
so
the gods and you had a bit of a falling out, didn't you?
Well, they knew that. Well, I think God and I like to keep our relationship interesting, and he knew that I was going to use this story someday, so we might as well make it a story.
I give you that. He is really doing a good job. I give you that.
Yes. He's quite the orator. And so they took me by ambulance to the municipal airport, and they wheeled me into the airplane. Now, this is like a Cessna. And they strapped me literally to the inside wall of the cabin. I could barely see out the window like this. And I feel like I'm Houdini, and they expect me to escape. And so they strap me in, and they fly me 20 minutes to Mayo. It's 100 miles or 160 kilometers around there. And so they get me into Mayo and start getting me ready for my first procedure. And during that time between the first surgery is when they diagnosed me with having necrotizing fasciitis.
For the viewers out there and listeners out there, necrotizing fasciitis is a very, very rapidly progressing disease where bacteria overwhelm the system, and they are sneaky and brutal. And we will hear shortly from Chris how. Try that again. And we will hear shortly from Chris what that really meant. But you can imagine that the bacteria started in his arm and very rapidly crept up all kind of little paths between muscles, between blood vessels. They just sneak up and up and up and up and start overwhelming the system.
Yes, indeed.
So right now they were all hiding, but they're about to be detected. Mayo Clinic, bring it on. So exactly. What happened then?
Well, it's kind of funny you said to bring it on, because that was my attitude when I was talking with the surgeon before the first surgery, and that offset him a bit, because when in his experience, and maybe you faced this as well, Stefan, that when you're talking with patients who are about to go into a life-saving surgery, they usually are very scared. They usually have, tears flowing, or they might be panicky. I was quite the opposite. I was joking with him. I had a very go get 'em attitude about it. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the movie True Lies with Arnold
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You remember the part where he's drugged and he's in the chair and his heart is listing back and forth?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
he's going to tell the guy how he's going to kill him.
Yeah.
That's how I was acting. My head was lolling back and forth. I kind of looked like a drunk Charles Xavier.
Uh,
And I gave this attitude like, let's do this. Let's go. Come on. And it really upset him a bit. But not enough where he couldn't save my life, obviously.
I
And
think
so,
that there is the discrepancy. Hey, viewers, the discrepancy is that what Chris thought would happen and what the surgeon knew that would happen was probably rather disconnected.
yes.
I think if Chris had the mildest inkling where the Chainsaw Massacre would end, yeah. But, okay, how did it continue your story, man?
All right. So they ended up putting me under for about 5 days from Sunday night. So this is Sunday night now, or afternoon. And I was unconscious until Thursday evening. And during that time, I had gone through a number of surgeries, first to debride the infected skin and tissue. And then the second surgery, actually, they were planning on taking my right arm. There was no question. The infection had gone so deep into my forearm that they thought that it was going to be just a lost cause. But the occupational therapist in attendance saw that I had hand function. And so what they did was, you might find this very interesting, they extracted a 15-inch by 4-inch flap of skin from my left thigh and then attached it to my right arm and forearm. And so since this is my thigh on my hand, I call it my fan. And I'm thinking of copywriting that.
That's right. And that's a very good one, actually.
Thank
So
you.
again,
Yeah.
guys, what I've been alluding to is the need for very radical treatment. If you ever to see that, it is a horror film called Skinned Alive. Because what you have to do as a surgeon and as an anesthetist, we have to take away the tissue that is very clearly rotten. Because that's what it is. It's galloping body rot. And so it might be a little bump down there. Let's say where my watch is, that's the little bump.
Mm-hmm.
You make a decent incision around it, see what is there, look at the tissues underneath there, and if they look grayish like rotten meat, well, they have to go. I mean, it doesn't matter what tissue it is. If it is a muscle, if it is a tendon, whatever it is, it goes. So from that little incision there, you might strip the arm and you go up and up and up and up until you basically find tissue that is still viable and that is not rotten. And unfortunately, I've seen brutal cases where we took 10, 20, 30% of the patient's tissues, and this is one of the most life-threatening diseases and one of the most dangerous things that Chris could have ended up with. So this is not for the faint-hearted.
Yes, exactly. Do you actually want to see the extent of
Come on,
the
then.
injuries? Okay, yeah. So
very few people on my show take their shirt off. So just as a warning, having said that, if our viewers want more of that, we can arrange that.
So after a few minutes, I'm going to have to start charging.
Yeah.
So it's here. the back of my hands where it started. It went all the way through my shoulder,
Yeah.
and then my chest here down by my rib cage,
Yeah.
and then to my back.
Yeah. Wow, man. Wow. 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 This is brutal, and it is an incredibly brutal disease. And well done to my colleagues there at Mayo Clinic. They they rescued your bacon. There's no doubt about that. And it would have been such a scary thing for your family, because
Yes.
here you were the last memory you had were, oh, come on, bring it on. And then they brought it on, but you were asleep. And that's probably very good that you were asleep for that.
Yes.
And the way, dear viewers, if you know, the way it works is that you do the surgery, you cut back to bleeding tissue, then you cover the area and wait and see how the patient behaves. Often enough, there are ups. Well, there are ups and downs. Blood pressures will be more stable, then it will go off again, and you you just know this is a really, really, really sick man lying there in the bed. So that's why he had to go back and forth to theater. If he was not improving, then they would hunt for more tissue that needs to come out. So this is not a quick fix. And after all, if you don't want to strip someone completely off their skin and off all the tissues, so there is this balance between taking too much and taking too little. So this is very much a very dynamic situation for the doctors, and a whole team will be involved in looking after a man like Chris. How was your wife at that time? Have you spoken? Yeah.
Oh yeah. In fact, we discussed this a couple days ago. I can never fully explain how fantastic my wife is. Um, once we knew that I was flying to Mayo, she
Yes.
loaded up the kids, she grabbed their stuff, she drove to Rochester, and then she talked to my brother, who
Yeah.
again lived in Michigan. He lived here at the time, still does. He got on a plane and flew right over. And so the two of them were at the hospital every day, visiting me, talking with the doctors. And she held everyone together. And, there are times when, she broke down, understandably, because she liked me. But at the same time, she was a rock. And not for our family, but for our friends and for my colleagues. And so it's I think, people say that I'm the warrior, have gone through this and having survived it, but she is an equally powerful warrior for being able to hold everyone through and, keep the ship on the straight and narrow. And so, but everyone stepped up. Everyone helped out as much as they could. There was a GoFundMe account to help us with lost wages, because, as you know, the healthcare system in the United States isn't the best. And so I started losing, pay because I ran out of sick days. And so we had to offset some costs. And that the GoFundMe account helped with those lost wages. And then my colleagues showed up. Oh, sorry about that. My lighting went down here. So I don't look like powder, because as you can imagine, me being a ginger, I can get really pale. And so we had some colleagues come in and bring my kids toys and bring dinners, and so it was a good reminder that I should not be a jerk to people. because everyone stepped up and was wonderful for us.
I'm so pleased to hear that. I'm so pleased to hear that you had a functioning community around you, because you were in for a long distance run, and so was your family.
Yes.
And it's often we are focusing on ourselves here, and as you said, on your true story of a survivor. Yet without your support team, you can't run a long distance race. And I'm not talking here half an hour around the lake. I'm talking here for days and days and days. Wow. Wow. When they woke you up, when they reduced the drugs that you were on to keep you comfortable, what was the first thing that you can remember?
I remember being at the bottom of a water slide that was spewing out green liquid. Now, I say that because the hallucinations that were brought on by my friend ketamine had me in such a state that I to this day I remember flailing around, being pummeled by green water, and seeing the nurse in the doorway looking panicked because I was less than jovial. I was not the guy who went into that first surgery.
Oh no. Again, for those of you out there, ketamine has got a very bad rap as a, not rap, it is a it is a widely used drug in the recreational realms. For us doctors, it can be an incredibly powerful drug that is a superb painkiller at lower doses. And it is one of the few drugs that actually maintains blood pressures whilst keeping someone asleep. And unfortunately, quite a number of patients can have dreams, which are often actually quite nice. But that was certainly not the case in your case here. So that's where that all came in. So it was a bit of a horror trip the way it sounds. And I was hoping for a more divine waking up with nurses looking handsome. I talked to male ones, and the females are equally beautiful,
Yes.
wafting around in their white linen. No.
No, it was it was comical looking back at it now, but yeah, ketamine, I could spend a good day describing the different hallucinations I had. But they were varied, and they were, again, comical now, but at the time I had never taken any drugs like that before, so it really threw me for a loop. But
Chris, Chris, you have to say though, yes, it can very much be the ketamine can be contributing to those visions, but often patients, regardless of what they're having for sedation, can go through some very traumatic times. Their psyche, their brain brings up things where you think, bloody hell, where's that coming from? But sure, ketamine can very much bring those things more out. So it's
yes.
like a catalyst.
Mhm.
Goodness gracious. When you got clear in your head, what was then sort of the first thing that you remember?
Well, I remember being taken to another room that didn't have a water slide. Thank you. And then at that time, my Becky, my wife, and my brother Jeff, and my father-in-law Bill came into the room and visited with me for a good half hour to an hour, to check up on me and see how I was doing. And I I had I had questions for them, but I think it was more for them to see that I was okay, and that, while there still were going to be surgeries, that more or less the worst was over. You know,
Beautiful. Well, and that's what we think as doctors, isn't it? And that's what we tell you, wow, you survived. Today is your new birthday. And literally, I've said that so many times to patients. Today, you've got a second birthday because you've made it through that. And then for me as an anesthetist, great, that's it. I've done my job because I'm the hardcore guy. I'm the dude who goes in, saves lives. And then to be around about that time in your journey, I would say goodbye because now more the surgical people take over, the nurses who are dressing you, etc. You don't need intensive care for that. But that's where the real journey starts because so far we are what? Maybe a week into your journey. But that's certainly not where it ended. What happened thereafter?
Well, and then after that first night, I was still experiencing some hallucinations. The next day, let's see, I thought the room flipped upside down. I thought there were bugs and an open window in the ICU room. I kept hearing the Macarena ad nauseum where there was no radio. I asked my wife to turn off the I asked my wife to turn off the TV, which actually was a window, I think she said. And so, I was still getting used to my new normal. I had a huge cast on my right shoulder and arm. And for some reason, my pinky had been covered as well in a cast. I thought they amputated it. And so I'm thinking, hey, I could get a robo pinky. I can have this turn into a laser pointer. And so I can go back into the brick and mortar school and I could use this to, to show kids where on the board they should look. Perfect. As you can see, my pinky is still with me, so no robo pinky, alas. But the next couple days to a week, they were getting me back in for some skin graft harvesting surgeries to start covering up those areas. I'm not sure if you can see here, but there's a texture to my skin graft here. They used Integra as a base, and then they put the skin grafts on top of the Integra. And they were very worried, especially about the elbow, about it not catching the first time. But thankfully it did. And then they also had to check on the fan to make sure that that it had adhered as well. And so they would check for blood flow in the fan. And there's always a little bit of drama when they would do that because if it didn't catch, then they'd have to take another hunk out of me. And I didn't tell you this, that when they did take the flap of skin from my left thigh, that being a runner and a football player or soccer player here in the US, I have rather large thighs. I have rather big thighs. And so they couldn't close the wound naturally. So they had to take out my vastus lateralis. And they attached a knob on each side of my wound and then installed a Jacob's ladder inside there and tightened it up slowly as time went on so it would heal up. And so my left thigh is more of a tri than a quad now.
Oh, wow. Wow. And that just shows because one thing is never just one thing. One thing leads to another and another and another.
Yes.
Crikey. So right now you are in a position that you can barely take in food yourself. You're covered in, well, a cast on the arm and copious amounts of dressings over your chest. Your left thigh is affected. You're hobbling around. That's probably as far as your recovery has gone so far, isn't it?
Yeah, I was actually bedridden for the first couple of weeks, and so they also had to put I forget the technical term, but basically air pumpers on my legs to keep blood flow and to keep clots from forming. In fact, I think they found a clot,
Oh,
and so they gave me some Xarelto. They prescribed Xarelto for me to keep the clot from getting worse and to keep other clots from forming. So yeah, for the first 2 weeks I was bedridden, and then I also had a catheter in there, so that was fun. But eventually, I was able to walk, and my first trip was to get from my hospital room to the nurse's station, which was 6 feet away. It was across the hall. And before I had gone into the hospital, a week before, I had run a Pi Day race. I'm not sure if they have them there in New Zealand, but Pi Day is March 14th, and it celebrates, pi, 3.141592558, so on and so forth.
oh, I see.
Yes, and so I ran a 3.14 mile race, and I did that in less than 19 and a half minutes. So a pretty good clip.
I would think
Um,
so.
yeah, and so thank you. So to go from that to almost exhausting myself walking 4 meters was, it was one of those moments where it was a real gut check, because I could have gone into a depression, or I could have started going through some PTSD, but I chose the latter. I chose not to look at this as woe is me, look how far I've fallen, but okay, this is new reality. This is where I'm starting. Let's see how far I can go.
Wow. Wow. May I ask, Chris, you believe in God?
Yes, I do.
Was your belief, your faith, was that the source of your optimism, or was it that you did not realize the journey that lay ahead, or where did you get that optimism from?
I think, part of it is my faith, but also when Becky had told me how strongly people had stepped up for us, that, they set up the GoFundMe account. They were bringing food and toys to my kids. Everyone around the world whom I knew was chiming in and sending their support. For me
Wow.
to become depressed or negative or pessimistic would have been an entire slap in their face to say,
Wow.
well, you know what, you're doing this for me. Well, I'm still going to be angry. I couldn't see myself doing that at all. And so I felt a sense of duty to take what they've given me and run with it, essentially, or hobble with it.
Yeah. Oh, how beautiful. What, oh, wow. Because that is certainly not a common reaction amongst people who have gone through a life-threatening disease. There is, there are some blue days. There are inevitably some heart-reckoning days waiting. But clearly, so far, you have mustered energy from somewhere that is beautiful, and it's lovely to hear.
Thank you.
Did that last, or were there dark days down the line?
There were a couple days when I broke down and cried, and it wasn't because of despair or anger. It was more frustration with the moment. Like one time I cried in the hospital it was 3 a.m. and they started weaning me off of the stronger painkillers, and I couldn't get to sleep. And they had just harvested some skin grafts from my back, and so I was laying on my back. I couldn't get into a comfortable position. I was dog tired, and I just felt this exhaustion, and I broke down. And but after getting that out, I was able to, rest, if not sleep, rest a little more easily. But I needed that relief. I needed that stress release. And after that, I was able to just get, metaphorically, of course, get back on the horse, because they tried getting horses in there once, and they'll poop all over, and kick the IVs down. So, but
it's not a good mix, no.
no, it is not. But the kids love them, man.
Wow.
So, yeah. So it was. I'm very fortunate to say that I, I had that drive to stay positive and stay focused on my goal of recovering.
Wow. And if I think you are the living example to show what can happen if you can get your powers in your head right, when you can muster that power, channel it into action, daily action, step by step. Because here you were barely able to reach the nursing station, and now we are 5 years later. And now things, it's probably unfair if I compare the 6 foot, or make it 5 meters, probably something like that, the distance then to the nursing station, to what you accomplish now. That's maybe a bit too fast, too quick. But how was it 6 months, 12 months down the line? What was your progress?
Well, I have to say that while I was in the hospital, my brother did buy me an iPad, and one of the first things I remember doing on that iPad was buying a pair of running shoes. So when I got out of the hospital, I was able to. I had new running shoes to motivate me to get running again. Um, so as soon as I signed off on that home therapy that I had partaken, after my discharge, I laced up those shoes and I went out for my first run. And it was awful. It was 1 mile, the worst mile I've ever run, but it was good to get that one started. And then I started doing a run walk method when I would go out for my runs. And then the month after my home therapy ended, my son and I, he was 6 at the time, we ran a 5K here in town. We walked that. And then eventually there was another 5K a month later that I ran, actually two, one in Michigan, right there. And then in October, I ran a 10K. And I actually ran that on, I think, 41 minutes. And so, I was fortunate enough to get almost back to where I was before in terms of running.
Wow. 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 Where the hell did you take this energy from? This is such a beautiful story. God, if we can take 10% only from the energy you had to get you going and implant that into other patients, we would go so much further. I'm astounded about your positivity in your life, and it's beautiful to hear.
Thank you.
So beautiful. What would you tell other people or what do you tell other people now when they go through hard times? What lessons can we learn from you?
Thank you for asking that, Stefan. When I do my presentations, when I speak to people, I think of the thought process I went through, and the first thing I remember doing was thinking of all the good things that I had in my life. And yes, I had my faith, I had my family, I had my friends, all these people who stepped up for us. But I also thought of the small things, because a lot of times it's the small things that make life really worth living. And so I thought of the fact that I could binge watch the first season of Daredevil on Netflix, because I'm not sure if you picked up on it. I'm a huge geek. And that's when that first awesome season came out. And so I was able to watch that as long as I could, for as long as I could. I really enjoyed the hospital pizza. You wouldn't think that hospital pizza would be that good, but I guess Mayo paid top dollar for the recipe, because it was top notch when I could finally eat it. Of course, it took a couple weeks. And so I just thought of all the positive things in my life, and then I thought of also, how I could acknowledge those whom I appreciated. I made an effort to learn all the names of the doctors, the nurses, the medical staff, even the people delivering the pizza, because I felt that I needed to show them how much I appreciated them. So I got to know every one of them as well as I could. We'd have a little conversation. And, I would also thank everyone on Facebook who messaged me and, and donated to our GoFundMe account. Actually, Becky took care of that, but I also messaged some people who donated money. And so I want to let them know that they were appreciated, because I think a lot of times we think, wow, man, I really like how so-and-so does this, but we never tell them. It's never, they don't know how we feel. So we have to go and tell them. And then finally, it's, I have to give someone else a reason to be thankful, because it would be selfish of me to say, wow, my life is so great. Too bad for you. And so I try to give people a reason to be thankful. And it doesn't have to be anything that costs a lot or anything. Like you can rake your neighbor's lawn. You could, say thank you to you open the door for someone at the store for them, as long as you have a mask on. You can, pick up garbage that you see on the ground. And so what I've done is I've used the game TAG as an acronym for this. And so the T is think of all the good things in your life. A is acknowledge you appreciated. And G is give someone else a reason to be thankful. And like the game TAG, you pass that on to someone else so they can do the same.
Beautiful. We two live actually very, very similar lives for completely different reasons, and without me running long distances. Okay, I give you that. But man, this is you have described the power of gratitude. You have described the power of doing good things, the little things, to say good morning with a smile to someone who is clearly and meaning it, truly meaning it, and spending that moment to be nice to people, regardless if it is the CEO or the cleaner. And more often than not, I actually rather prefer to spend time with the cleaner than with the CEO.
Yeah.
And it is so beautiful. It is so beautiful that this life of giving, because it throws back so many smiles and so many nice things back to you. It is a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's beautiful. Oh, Chris, you are such an inspiration. Wow.
Thank you.
Wow. So you are at the moment, you're going, or you have been going on to speaking tours and have been actually quite a motivator, haven't you?
I've been trying to, yes. With the pandemic, there aren't a lot of speaking opportunities, with face-to-face events, but I have participated in some virtual events, and I'm looking to do some more. For example, I'm doing speaking to a group of business owners next month, and I hopefully will be speaking at a running expo actually in Rochester at the beginning of September.
So you're
And
coming
so
Coming full circle.
Exactly. And
Nice.
but I'm really starting to talk to administrators and event planners in schools, so I can communicate with students not only in the primary but also secondary levels, so I can help them realize that saying thank you is more than just lip service. You know, being truly being thankful is basically a gift that you're not only giving yourself, but you're giving others. And by everyone doing their part, we can make the world a better place.
Oh, so beautiful. That is exactly such a beautiful message that you're sending out there into the ether, and that's why you are on my show. You went out of your way to make time for me, and vice versa. I want to bring out stories such as yours because they mean so much, and they might just plant that seed into someone who then starts making these tiny little changes that suddenly changes the world around them. And if we do that with 3 people and they change all their world and pass it on, what a snowball system, what an avalanche we are creating by yeah, being there, showing the good things in people, one interview at a time. I'm so, so, so grateful to have spoken to you today. This has been quite a humbling experience for me, and to see your beautiful strength shining through those, no doubt, darker days than your brain might let you remember now is humbling, very humbling, to say the least.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm. Chris, I would one day love to see a picture of your wife or even communicate with her to actually see this wonderful dynamo, this wonderful power pocket packet that must have been working in the background with 3 young children, a husband in intensive care, and keeping it all together. That is a true heroine. So please give her a huge hug from me,
I certainly
unbeknownst,
will.
because that is hard, hard, hard work into keeping it
Yes.
together. So guys, if you're listening out there and if you think at the moment you're down and out, hopefully Chris's journey has shown you that there is the most beautiful life out there once you kept walking. And walking might not be walking, it might be crawling. It might not even be crawling, it might be literally uh, moving along centimeter pace. But guys, don't stop moving. Don't stop. Just keep going because the shit will be behind you at one stage. You just need to keep going. And a life is waiting for you out there that is so, so beautiful. Because once you have gone through so much shit, you actually appreciate the small things so much more. I could not agree more with Chris. So please, guys, get going, keep going, and make this world a little bit better. Small baby steps, but keep making the steps. Chris, so, so many thanks from New Zealand to you in Minnesota. It is beautiful. Thank you very much for being on my show, and I wish you all the best for the future. Hey?
Well, thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate the time, and I wish the best for you as well.
Absolutely. Look after yourself, guys out there. Bye.
Dream on, dream